Welcome, everybody, to the ShopNotes Podcast. It's episode 169 today. It's John, Phil, and Logan, as always, on the last of the Septembers for the podcast. And on today's episode, we're going to be talking about the continuation of Walnut season in all its many and various forms. So I hope you enjoy today's episode, brought to you by ShopNotes Magazine. Check it out, 4 digital issues for a great price at shopnotes.com. Let's go back to last episode, had a couple of comments. One of them will lead into today's episode. Kevin Thomas says, wonder if any of you guys would be interested in teaching a class for the Kansas City Woodworkers Guild. If not a 2 or 3 day meeting, maybe a Zoom meeting with our members. And I would say yes, we would be interested to all of those. Just send us an email.
We'll trade woodworking content for barbecue.
Just pay us in barbecue. Yeah. And then Alfida158 says, didn't Mythbusters do a crossover episode where they tried to determine which is more deadly, a walnut falling from a tree in Iowa or a penny falling from the top of the Empire State Building?
Probably.
Yeah. Speaking of which, how is the walnut falling sensations going there?
They have significantly slowed down since we filmed last week.
Okay.
Yeah, so my boys and I and my wife picked up we picked up 8 gallons on, I think, Saturday or Sunday. I think Sunday morning before football, before the throttling of the Denver Broncos commenced. But we picked up 8 gallons. Last night, my son and I threw those in a trash can, a big metal trash can with my mud whip, and we de-hulled them, took the green holes off of them, okay? And while I was doing that, he walked around and within 3 minutes picked up another 5 gallons. So, and that's literally just in the area that we graded for the shop. So okay. That's not like going behind, because every walnut that hits the shop is hitting on the backside.
Sure.
And the slope of the roof, there is I could set a line of 5-gallon buckets up along the drip line and probably catch every one of those walnuts. You know what I mean? So they're still coming. And I kind of screwed up the other day too, because we picked up the walnuts, and then I think Monday night's when my wife went into the doctor. Anyways, one of the nights I went out and with I seeded, and I used my lawn roller behind my tractor to push the seed down into the dirt. I didn't pick up walnuts beforehand, so I basically planted 400 walnut trays during that time. So, yeah, they have significantly slowed, though. Although I noticed last night my wife kind of wandered outside, and we were standing there looking at the trees, and there's 1 or 2 trees that appear to have not dropped any yet.
Oh.
So I don't know why. But I got one tree in particular that looks like it is just chock full still. So
yeah. I think that's ice brewed. That's the
yes, probably.
They're just waiting for frost.
I will tell you though, I love walnuts.
I do too.
I just, so we de-hulled them last night, and you're supposed to, so you de-hull them, you let them dry, and you're supposed to let them basically air cure for 2 weeks.
Sure.
Okay. And that kind of brings out the flavor. I was like, we're going to try a raw one, just straight out the sludge bath, and we cracked it open, and oh my God, it's so good. So my wife does not like them. My boys do not like them. I like them. My grandpa likes them. So I'm going to bring him a big old bag full of them.
Nice.
Because he'll sit there and crack them. I didn't realize, though, that black walnuts are one of the toughest nuts to crack.
Yes.
I did not realize this. So like trying to figure out what type of, because I mean, whenever I've done it, I've just sat there with a little sledgehammer on like a little 3-pound mallet on the concrete and just fucking just, you know, whacked them, you know, and I got too many to do that. My great grandpa, used to roll them into his driveway and then he'd back over them with his Buick, just back and forth, and he would literally sit there on the ground and just, he would sweep them up, put them in a bowl, and then he would sit on his little Adirondack couch in his covered patio and just sit there and pick out the walnut meat.
Okay.
But I gotta come up with a better solution.
Yeah.
So if anybody has a vintage walnut cracker they want to sell me, you let me know.
Well, and I've heard that black walnuts have been referred to as like the Cadillac of walnuts, because like the ones that you get in a grocery store or whatever aren't
They're
black
like
walnuts.
Yeah, they're like English.
And the reason that black walnuts aren't really a commercial crop is because of how hard it is to, and you can't, it's not as easy to consistently get
Big
them
meat.
cracked open where you get like the big pieces.
Mm-hmm. No. Yep, they definitely come out in chunks. The interior structure of that nut is a little bit more veiny, so it's like it holds the meat in there. So it's like as you're picking it out, you're getting like little chunks versus the big walnut halves that you get out of English walnut.
Yeah, where it looks like little brains.
Yep.
Yeah. In my mechanical engineering brain, I was thinking of a way to try to like automate that. Like, how do they get the big chunks of walnut that you buy at the store without? Because every time I've cracked a walnut, it's like you get those little pieces, and it's like, how do you do that and get all?
I went down this rabbit hole.
Out?
I went down this rabbit hole last night, and it's about $900 to buy a low-end commercial automated cracker.
Dang.
And
how, like, what does that look like? Is it like rollers that like smash it?
Yeah. Or? So I think they're like teeth, and it's almost like a grinder.
Oh, yeah.
And as it comes in, it grinds it and crushes it. So you basically get like a slurry of meat and, I mean, not slurry, but like you get a mixture of meat and shell. Yeah.
And you still got to pick it all.
That's right.
All pieces out.
Yeah.
I think we could talk to Chris.
Walnut slurry.
Chris Fitch probably has something.
Probably. You know what I was thinking? I was thinking maybe I just go to Harbor Freight and buy an arbor press. You know, they make the little 1-ton arbor presses, and just sit there and just crack.
See, we get pneumatic power. You know,
air power,
the air compressor on this, and
my grandpa, my dad's dad had a couple of walnut trees in their yard, and he was a walnut aficionado. And during walnut season, he had a machinist vise in his basement, and he just kind of had a stool set up and a bucket underneath it. So he just used the machinist vise and be like crack, and then pick it apart. And
man, I will tell you though, one thing I'm discovering is not every walnut is created equal. There are about 7,000 different sizes. They're like fingerprints. Everyone's different. So like, trying to figure out, like, I mean, you'd be like cranking the handle to get to the smallest ones, or open it up to get to the biggest ones. Some of them are, you know, yay big. Then there's a lot of them that are like little ones. And I'm thinking maybe I'll sort them into like Logan nuts and squirrel nuts, you know, and I'll just leave a little pile outside for the squirrels. I don't know.
Well, you did plant a bunch of them for the squirrels, just
I did. That's
the winter.
True. And I took one of the dogs through the timber last night. Because I mean, it was just beautiful out. So I took the dogs through the timber. Terrible mistake. I threw away a pair of shorts and a t-shirt because there were so many burrs on them. Like,
oh my gosh, yeah.
Oh God, I just was like, you know, I've had these shorts for 8 years. They're gone.
I'm just gonna light them
But the
up.
amount of walnuts that are in the timber, them squirrels are just fine. Like all of these nuts that we've collected, we have collected off of basically 3 trees, and we have 5 acres of walnut trees. Like the walnuts or the squirrels are just fine. they don't need any of my help.
So you could open like a little U-pick stand or something like that.
Yeah.
Just
well, I got my oldest son really excited because I was like, hey. It's like, you know, if you pick these up, you know, there's a place in Marshall. Actually, there's a few places in Iowa that buy black walnuts.
Oh, okay.
And I remember seeing a place in Marshalltown that collected them. And actually, the way it works is you bring your green walnuts there, they hull them in their machine, and then you get paid on the de-hulled weight. Okay? Oh. So you don't get paid for the heavy green weight. You get paid for,
get paid for water weight.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's so, like, $16 per 100 pounds. Like, that ain't worth it.
That's not even pay the gas.
To
get there.
It doesn't.
Let alone get back.
It doesn't. So, but I mean, it was kind of cool. The Iowa State Forestry Association, so the Iowa State Foresters, they also pay for walnuts. I don't know if they plant them. I don't know if they use them for wildlife feed. I don't think they probably do that, just because the Forestry Association doesn't like you feeding animals. But yeah, it was interesting. It was a little rabbit hole. It was a little hyperfixation on my part last night. So.
Well, you're just trying to add it to the, your larger family of operations that you have going on there, like Chunk of Trunk and What the Duck and.
Yep, that's right. Yeah.
So Walnut here's a question. Walnut Acres. Yeah. Here's the question then. So if you have all of those walnuts, if you were to fence off your property, if you had pigs, do the pigs eat walnuts?
They do. Okay. It's funny. I was actually talking to Ann Briggs about this when we had Ann of All Trades, when we had her out here for our event several years ago. That was right towards the beginning of COVID. It was right before COVID. And I was talking about getting goats, and she's like, well, if you have walnuts, you need to get pigs. I was like, what do you mean? She's like, pigs will eat the walnuts. Like, goats won't eat the walnuts because they're poisonous to them. Or maybe they will, and that's the problem.
Just once.
They're poisonous. Yeah, they'll eat them once. But pigs can eat them, and their pigs' jaws can actually break open the black walnuts.
Okay.
So, yes, I could.
All right.
My wife kind of shot down the pig thing because we had too much stuff going on. We weren't going to be home, and then COVID hit for 3 years.
Right.
And
it's the perfect time to get pigs.
Yeah, that's what I said. Oh, like hindsight.
Yeah.
Like I had the fence, like we had fence laid out and everything. Like we were ready to go.
So acorn fed pigs are a big thing. So maybe walnut fed pigs would be.
Yeah.
That's kind of what I was wondering. Like, how would that change? I've always wanted to I've talked to my dad about this because his dad was a butcher in a small town in Wisconsin, and it was like they would do processed deer during hunting season and, pigs. And I was wondering, because there was a place, I don't remember if it was in Iowa, that made cider.
Okay.
And then the leftover pressings from the apples, they would feed pigs. Mm-hmm. So I'm like, if you did that and finished your pigs with pressed apples or acorns or walnuts, how does that affect the flavor of the resulting pulled pork sandwiches?
Mm-hmm. And will the apple pressings ferment and get the pigs drunk?
Right. I guess it depends on the stage of the pressings. Are you doing it from like fermented hard cider or just pressed out from just regular sweet cider?
Yeah.
I did tell my wife. So my big thing with these walnuts, this has everything to do with woodworking in case people are wondering.
Right.
We're talking about trees. It's okay.
Yes, that's true. I told my wife, like, my plan with all these walnuts is to make a bunch of like honey walnut butter because I got a bunch of honey downstairs still. I like 6 gallons of honey downstairs still from my last hives that we got rid of. But it made me really interested in making Nocino next year. Because we had talked about that. Where the problem is you need the walnuts before the interior nut like really develops.
Yeah, or the shell even.
Yeah, well, I mean, the interior shell. Like you're basically getting the green husk is what you're getting, and from my little bit of research, you want it to where you can take a pocket knife and cut the nut or cut the walnut in half still. And that's pretty much the right time to use the green walnuts for nocino, which nocino is a walnut liqueur that you basically macerate these green walnuts in some form of alcohol. Generally, it's like an Everclear or a vodka or something. And I have heard, and sometimes you'll put like cloves in it or, you know, whatever spices you want, and it kind of becomes like this fall-y winter drink. Right. I have heard some people kind of relate the taste to black licorice, which I despise. I do not like. So I don't know if it was walnut flavor, man. Oh yeah. And I told my wife, she's like, how do you like those black walnuts? And I enjoy the flavor. And I think some of it is, you know, my great grandpa, he passed away at 101 a couple of years ago. But he was the one that would always do the walnuts. Like he would always go get them out of the city parks in Cedar Rapids. He had a John Deere corn sheller. So one of them that you'd crank by hand, and he'd dump the walnuts in there.
Really?
It was at my house. Oh, yeah. It was at my house for years. We just sold it last year because I'm like, I'm never going to do walnuts. I literally texted my dad last night, like, what the heck? I should have kept the corn sheller. He said, yeah, you should have, because that would have been the way to do it. But anyways, he would always do that. And then my grandma was the best baker in the world. Like, I don't care what anybody says. Anthony Bourdain, well, he's not around anymore. I don't care what he like. My
he doesn't
grandma
say anything anymore.
No, he doesn't say anything anymore. She used to make a lot of stuff with walnuts in it that my grandpa would collect. And as a kid, I didn't really care for them. But man, you're going to grandma's house. Like, she's got cookies. You're going to eat the cookies. And maybe this is where my love of oatmeal raisin cookies came from, because she would always do walnut oatmeal raisin cookies. So I don't know if like the flavor I get when I'm eating them is like nostalgic, but man, I love it. So I'm gonna do another batch of walnuts tonight, and then maybe this weekend when it's really warm out, I'll send the boys out to collect more. I have my son was kind of like, "This is bull crap, Dad. You can tell me I got to get 100 pounds to get $16.
Yeah,
100 pounds after you take the shells
dry weight."
Yes.
Dry weight.
And I was like, listen, I'll pay you $1 a gallon. And he's like, are we talking cash? And I'm like, no.
Whoa.
I was like,
it's Minecraft bucks.
Well, no, I know my son. I was like, no, better than cash. I will give you $1 per gallon, and I will go let you use it at a gas station and buy whatever you want. I know. He was like,
yeah.
He's like,
yeah.
Can I buy a lighter? I'm like, a lighter? Like, what? But we were waiting for the bus this morning. He's like, Henry, I'm going to get home and I'm just going to get buckets and we're going to pick up walnuts and we're getting $1 a gallon and then we can go spend it on gas station food. And that's awesome because gas station food is the best. I'm like, oh, the young, they're so naive.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Although I got 2 words for you: roller grill.
This is true. This is true. So, yep. So that's the Walnut Chronicles going on right now.
Yeah. So last walnut question to put out into the universe: which is more lethal, walking on broken walnut shells barefoot or Legos?
I'm still going Legos.
Yeah, probably. Most of the time, because you're never going to be outside on walnut shells.
Yeah. I mean, crushing them on the driveway and...
Oh, sure.
Yeah, but see, I think the Lego thing is it's a surprise factor.
Yeah,
like, you're not
usually
expecting
in the dark
it.
And
Mm-hmm.
you're just walking.
Like, if you're walking outside over where you just crushed walnuts, you deserve it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No,
Legos are like pit vipers. They just kind of jump out at you.
Yeah. Yep. So...
Okay, no, that's fair. I would love to hear anybody else's walnut recollections if you're from, particularly the eastern part of the United States. Although I think there's western walnuts out there. So
yeah, you get a lot of the English walnuts out in California. That's where the orchards are.
Yeah.
Although they do a lot of grafting out there, so you get these weird like English black walnut hybrids. Because I think I think the black walnut rootstock is hardier, so they graft black walnut rootstock onto English walnut trees because they are easier to crack.
Yeah.
And they're smooth. Like they're a smooth. They don't have the brain type look to them like black walnuts do.
Right.
So, but I would also like to hear from people that are down south that are in pecan country.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Sorry, pecan country.
Sure.
So,
There's a line.
Yes. So.
And like, what would you do with the walnuts? Like, are you making nocino? And does it taste like black licorice? These are all questions out there. Put them on for your answers on our YouTube channel, or send them to us at woodsmith@woodsmith.com. See, now where I'm from in Wisconsin, because it gets so cold, they do a lot of grafting with fruit trees and stuff. And one of them was, one of the big experiments was, there's a lot of evergreen trees there that are very hardy. And then you would graft like apple into that.
Huh.
So you'd have this, very
pine solly apple taste.
Right. Well, it actually
like
turned into
gin.
Yeah, it was more like you got the biggest pineapples you've ever seen.
Oh.
This
Anyway,
is why we don't get invited to the Garden Gate podcast.
On their podcast.
Yeah.
One thing, it does remind me of a book that I read several years ago. It's called Oak, the Frame of Civilization.
Okay.
And it was about how oak trees were useful across a wide variety of cultures historically and what people did with it. And this was it was something that I had wondered about, but got the answer, is that long ago people would collect acorns and grind it into a flour to be used in either stews or in baking. But apparently, like red oaks, the red oak family it's very, I don't know what the right word is, astringent or something like that.
Yeah.
That you had to rinse soak it and rinse it a lot in order to be able to use the nut meat from it. Whereas like white oaks, you don't have to. And then there are some cultures, I think in Korea, where you can buy like acorn paste or flour or things like that, and they would use that. And then a lot of the native cultures in the U.S. did the same thing, where they would make kind of like baked goods from it.
And I've heard that same thing where the acorns, to utilize them for human consumption, you have to soak them. I don't know if it's, I don't know, like they're very bitter, I think.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I've never tried to eat an acorn.
Yeah.
So
What about the golden oaks? What are their acorns like? Or did they die out in the 1990s?
I think they died.
They
in
did.
the 90s,
Yeah. They were just way over. They're on the CITES list.
Yes.
Like with mahogany and ebony.
Yeah, like it was the shiplap pandemic. Kinda.
I hope you enjoyed today's episode, brought to you by ShopNotes Magazine. Check it out, 4 digital issues for a great price at shopnotes.com. Anyway,
it's interesting because I also heard I heard from Shannon Rogers, Renaissance woodworker. Has Shannon's lumber update and lumber industry update podcast. Anyways, he had a good segment on talking about how the poplar was the tree that built America. I mean, kind of along the same lines of the oak. You know how oak was. I mean, oak's been used in boat building. Oak's used for everything. It grows everywhere. Everybody uses it. But it was interesting that Shannon was talking about poplar was one of those that when people hit the U.S., North America, the poplar trees. That's what they grew hundreds of feet tall. They were straight as an arrow, and they used them for everything. So it was interesting. It was interesting. Yeah, it might have been a Wood Talk podcast several years ago.
That's probably how they got so popular.
Probably. That's probably what it was. If you can find that, we'll put a link to that in the show notes page for that podcast.
Yeah, I'll see if I can find it. Yeah.
Okay. So to transition to some legitimate woodworking, I had a request from my college-age student about needing a rolling pin for making pizzas. So I found yeah, exactly right. So there was a little piece of walnut that we had used for a bandsaw cradle tip that was here, and it looked exactly like it had a rolling pin inside of it. So I decided to turn one, and I did.
Nice.
And I don't do much turning, but
although you've done more and more over the last couple of years.
That's true. I have mostly tool handles, but
Everybody starts somewhere.
Maybe that's the gateway drug. And so I did a French style rolling pin, which is different from the more advanced engineering German style that has the handles and then the round roller in between it. The French style is just basically a double tapered dowel.
Yep.
So, which I thought would be relatively straightforward to do. And it
Symmetry's
is
hard. Yep.
But having each side be, similar or symmetrical is not as easy as it looks.
No. The symmetry is deceptively hard because you're like, he's got to make one side look like the other. Well, you go a little too far on one side, you got to go a little bit too far on the other side too. But then you go a little bit too farther, and then you're chasing this endless loop. Yeah.
So at some point, I just had to cut it off and be done with it. But I did get it done, and I think it looks pretty cool.
Looks good.
And a walnut and rolling pin and walnut was kind of fun. And then I had we had ordered some chunks of shellac wax a while ago, and I still have the chunks somewhere. But then I had softened them with turpentine in a double boiler. And so I have like a paste wax of shellac wax. So I applied that to the rolling pin. And that was cool too, because it's got a nice color. Will it get worn off eventually? Yeah, but
100%. Yep. Doesn't matter though.
Yeah. So anyway, that's kind of fun.
Yeah, speaking of turning, so one of the guys that I'm friends with Tim on Facebook. I know he's commented before on our Facebook Lives. I know Tim listens to the podcast. But Tim's been doing a lot of Tim Passmore. He's been doing a lot of he's been experimenting. I've kind of watched his journey experimenting with basket weave illusion turnings. Okay. And I'll show you one in a second. But I always see that Tim's selling his work. So I reached out. I just sent him a message on Facebook. Said, "Hey, Tim, how do I buy one of these?" He's like, "Well, I don't know. Just send me money and I'll send you one." And I was like,
Seems pretty straightforward.
I was like, how do you feel about doing a trade? Like, I'll trade you one of my holoforms for one of yours. And he's like, that sounds cool. So it arrived, I think, early last week. So this is what a basket weave illusion is. This is a little holoform. So it is turned. Then you use a beading tool to create these ribs around the outside, and then you individually burn the groove in between the beads, and then you segment each of those into what should look like a Native American style basket weave. And then you can color them. So basically you're left with a grid, and then you can do whatever design you want. So this one is kind of these little diamond chevron type things. Beautiful.
What's the coloring? Is it just dye or magic marker?
So they're usually like a dye pen.
Okay.
Like, think of a paint pen, but not a paint pen. There's a bunch of different ones. If you walk into Michael's, any water-based or alcohol-based one is what a lot of people will use. And the burning then gives you kind of a color by number. So what guys do, guys and women, I'm using that term broadly. What people do when they turn them is they'll turn them, they'll do the lines because you do the beating, you do the burning on the lathe, and then you also generally do these burnings, so the rays on the lathe, but then they'll finish it, then they'll bring it and sit on their couch watching TV coloring it. Because, some of these, this one, Tim said, has 1,728 cells.
Okay.
Some of the bigger ones, he said, it will have over 5,000. So if you think about coloring that, and this is a pretty basic design. It's a nice design because it's nice and simple, looks good. But some of the real big ones that have really tiny cells you'll spend hours coloring. So people sit on their couches coloring them. So yeah, Tim's. I'll put Tim's email up on the show notes page. Timber Creations, timpass76@gmail.com. Now, here's the thing, though. When I generally give somebody, so my turnings, I don't sell them. Usually, I just give them away. I like to gift them to people. I'm always gifting them to people that don't turn. So they're always like, "Oh my God, this is amazing!" Like Tim knows how to turn. So now I gotta put up or shut up and actually do a good job turning the hollow form. There's actually there's a piece of elm on the lathe right now that I started working on for Tim that I haven't got to because of crap going on this week. But yeah, it's like, dang it! Now I actually have to. I gotta put up and get Tim a nice pice because this one's
there you
nice.
Go.
Yeah,
raise the bar for you.
You'll send your turning, and then you see him later just using it as a blank to turn something else.
He's like, "Nice try, yeah. Nice try." So no, this is fun. I give Becky a lot of crap in our office because Becky likes to collect stuff. She's a collector. Mm-hmm. She likes rocks, and we talked about this I think last week. A lot of people on our staff collect like minerals and crystals and stuff like that. And to me, they're dustables. I now have a collection of turnings. Mm-hmm. So I have the same type of thing, but from different artists. So Tim's is going on the shelf next to some Jimmy Clues and Pat Carroll's and David Marks pieces. So
okay.
So Tim is in good company.
The best part of a collection like that, though, is it's not like you just found them randomly somewhere. Or
I searched them out.
Purchased them from some touristy store.
Yes.
On the beach or something like that. It's people that you know.
Yep.
And so not only the person, but also their turning style and a lot of the stuff that goes with it. So
yeah, exactly. So yeah, but no, I'll have to bring this in so you guys can see it because it's a very tactile thing to hold because of all those cells. It's very very cool.
See, if you got into making stuff like that, I'm sure Becky would color them. She likes coloring, so
that is true. That's fair.
Team up.
That's actually a great idea. We call those collaborations.
Yep.
Teamwork makes the dream work.
Yep.
All right. So there you go. Which would bring me full circle here to where we started is I wonder if people were to be thoughtful about the kind of woodworking they do throughout the year, is there a seasonality to woodworking?
Ooh.
In the sense, like you're collecting walnuts right now. Mm-hmm. Do people have, like at this time of the year, you're building this kind of stuff. At another time of year, you end up doing another kind of...
Yeah, because we kind of make assumptions in the magazine publishing industry of like, well, spring, maybe people are working on outdoor projects for their decks or patios or bird feeders or birdhouses and that kind of thing. And in the fall, maybe they're doing, Christmas presents, gift projects, that kind of thing. So yeah, it'd be interesting to hear what people have to say that they're doing out there.
So anyway, if you have any thoughts on that, you can put that on the comments as well. We'd like to share some of those in next week's episode. That would be kind of cool to find out from people. So the other kitchen, I did a couple of other kitchen related projects this week too. I do a lot of cooking and enjoy it. And I love using cast iron pots and pans. I have 3 cast iron skillets and a big enameled cast iron soup pot or whatever you want to call it. And the 2 smaller skillets that I have did not come with lids because I picked them up. I don't remember. I think one of them was from a garage sale long ago, and then the other one was from like Goodwill or a resale shop or something like that. And I've been on the lookout for matching lids, but in that size, that is extremely difficult to find. People apparently keep them or lost them, or they just never were made or whatever. But then I got an ad or an email newsletter promo, something or other from Milk Street, which is Christopher Kimball's new or recent thing, TV show, magazine, all that kind of stuff. And they had a Japanese cast iron pot. And it, instead of having a cast iron lid, it comes with a wood lid, which kind of surprised me. But then doing a little bit more digging on it, just because it piqued my curiosity, in Japan, there's a cooking accessory that is a simmering lid that they call it, where it's just a thin wood lid that doesn't fit over the pot. It nestles inside so that it keeps all of the cooking ingredients at or below the level of the whatever cooking liquid is, so that nothing floats up and gets dried out or whatever. So for braising or, whatever. Which got me thinking then maybe I can make my own lids for these 2 cast iron skillets. So I did. And in Japan, they're made from a Japanese cedar, which is part of the cypress family, I believe. But I had some Western red cedar around that had some really cool grain on it. So I made 2 lids and then put a handle in it that is held in a sliding dovetail. So and it was pretty fun, and I think turned out really cool.
So I wonder how that's going to hold up to the heat and moisture. Like, will it want to curl?
I don't know. Maybe. We'll have to find out. Yeah. When I put the sliding dovetail handle on, I put it across the grain for that very reason. And I didn't glue it.
Flat. Yep.
Yeah, it's to, as a way to hold it flat. And in a sense, there's nothing precision about it other than having a nice fit. I put a little rabbet around the bottom edge so that it kind of nestles on the pan. But there you go.
So on an unrelated note, I have a question for you guys. And this is kind of related to something we talked about yesterday.
Okay.
What is a good wood combination for a workbench? Yes, Kevin, I know you want an ash workbench. But I don't want an ash workbench. Because there's two workbenches on the horizon. One is one for the shop here. One is for our TV show. And we were talking about combinations, and both of those I think need a certain aesthetic for what they are, to look good color-wise for videos and photos. Both of them need that, right? So like our current workbench in there, I think is maple. Yep. Most workbenches, I'm making a generalization there, will have a maple top because it's hard. It's just pretty stark You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. We had for a recent shoot that we did some Type Bond videos with. We had one of our photo studio benches in there that is a fir top, and that's a really nice color. So what do you guys think is a good combination for like bench bases and tops together?
Yeah, I know we've used maple a lot because it's hard, but I think sometimes it's too hard and brittle. To work with and to work on. I almost prefer something like beech that's a little softer. I mean, still hard, but not as hard. Just got a little bit of give to it.
Yeah. Yeah, because after you left, John and I were talking about maybe doing the bench for the video studio because we want something that doesn't have that starkness to it of the maple, or a lot of times maple, especially with an oil finish on it, end up looking yellow.
Yeah. Yep.
Because we had talked about doing either fir, like a vertical grain fir with really tight growth rings, or maybe doing it in beech, like a straight grained, edge grain beech, because it has a little bit more of that red in it. And then we could still do the cherry base for the plan that we're doing. Because it would seem like you would almost have to do, like, there's a couple approaches you could take. One is that there's a very strong difference between the bench top and the base. Mm-hmm. It's all the same. You could do all the same, which I think would look a little too uniform. It feels like there has to be some kind of a difference. Or you do something where it's a similar tone, but the top would be something that is really low figured or grained, and then the base would have same color but more grain pattern or figuring in it.
So I was planning on for the bench here. I have a load of cherry that just came out of the kiln. I was planning on doing a cherry base.
Okay.
But the top, I just don't know. I don't really want maple.
Okay.
I don't really want cherry. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's like, and then you fall into the, there's two mentalities when it comes to the bench tops, that the top should be really hard, should be harder than what you're working on or working with, or that it should be softer than what you're working with, so it doesn't dent your parts. So I just don't know. I had thought beech, doing like a cherry base and then a beech top, because that's a pretty decent color.
Yeah. And I think those would go well together.
I think so too. But I don't know. I just, it's one of those things I'm kind of, or, I hate to go, I feel like this is kind of the 90s things to mix and match wood, but like, do you go like, cherry doors and then maple panels on them, and then you do a maple top? You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. Mm-hmm. I have some really nice spalted birch here.
Because you're doing a cabinet base.
Yeah, I'm doing like a cabinet style base. Yep.
Yeah. There'll be a lot of
a lot of wood. Yep. Or I don't use the cherry. I use like a poplar and I paint it.
Yeah. Which is what I did.
I mean, and that's a completely legit option. So I just don't know.
Yeah. Yeah, because you could always paint the cabinet and then do
whatever top,
or doors and drawers are not painted as well.
Yeah.
I mean,
yep.
So there's options there.
Yep. So, and then on that note, how do you guys feel about tool trays in a workbench top?
They just kind
Phil
of
says
collect.
no.
They kind of collect dust and
Yeah.
chips for me.
I'm not that organized of a woodworker. I've learned that and come to accept that about myself. And I think you have to be pretty meticulous in your care of what you're doing. Plus, I guess I could see it if you did a lot of hand work.
Yeah.
So that the debris that's on your bench is mostly shavings.
And not dust.
And not dust. But you do some handheld routing or biscuit joiner or whatever, and all of a sudden you get a bunch of like, granular kind of stuff, then that becomes more of an issue.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I do kind of like having maybe like a tool rack on an end or behind your bench.
Okay.
Where, we have that tool rack on the video set where it's like hold chisels and squares and files and that kind of thing. I think that can work far more than a tool well does for the very thing that John said. It's just that
See, I was thinking about it because I'm sitting here at my bench right now, and I have a large tabletop sitting on the bench, and then there's a bunch of tools. I haven't knocked any of the tools off yet, but sliding parts around, I'm like, God, it'd be really nice to have a well there to be able to just drop those tools into, so I could then slide the top over top of them. You know what I mean?
Right.
I don't know. I guess I see both sides of it. It does. The one thing that it does do is it eliminates the use of that backside of the bench.
Right.
Because you can't then use that, assuming you put the tool well on the backside of the bench.
Right.
You can't then use that backside for any work. It's a well. There was a very good, and it's been probably 10 years since I saw this website, and I can't find. I've looked and looked and looked and cannot find it. Somebody had a website that had a bunch of shop tours on it. It's like video shop tours shop tours via video. And there was a gentleman, and I can't remember who it was. He had a bench that he had built it was pretty much square, like call it square-ish, but each corner was designated to one task. Like as far as, this is where I work on the edge of the board, this is where I work on the end of the board, this is where I work on the face of the board, and stuff like that, which was kind of interesting. So he basically had 4 different vices, more or less. And then that's where that same gentleman's where I picked up the toothing the bench top. From, because he talked about how he continuously would tooth his bench every couple of months. So I don't know, because my plan with vices on my bench, and I don't know what our plan is in that studio, my plan is to use a tail vise or a wagon vise, I haven't decided on that, in conjunction with the Emmert vise I have. I know a lot of people like the big leg vise, and I have one and I do enjoy it. But I think that I want to use the Emmert vise instead. Okay. It's more of a face vise, kind of like you have on your bench, Phil. And I hate to use the Emmert as a face vise because it's much more than that, but that's what I'm going to use it as for now. So I don't know. There's all these. It's like when you build your final workbench, is it really your final workbench? Like, is there things on your workbench, Phil, that you would change that you just finished building? Just as in 2 years ago.
2 years ago, yeah.
Yeah.
I was thinking about it, and it's hard to say. Like right now, I'm still pretty happy with it. One thing that I have noticed is I have one of the Gramercy holdfasts, the like round wire ones. I have one of those, and I have one of the Lee Valley, the Veritas ones with the little knob that you turn and it applies pressure.
Yep.
The way that I built the bench, I thought it was thick enough because I had a pretty thick top board, and then where I would have my holdfast holes and then the dog holes that run in line with the vise, I glued another layer down underneath it to bring it up to make it thicker. However, I've noticed that it's not quite thick enough for the Gramercy holdfast to always lock down, which is frustrating to me. So I don't know if it's because my bench top is white fir and not a hardwood, that it just doesn't lock in. The Veritas one, I don't have a problem with at all.
Yeah.
So.
I bought a holdfast. I don't have it out here. It must be in the basement still. At the first Handworks from a blacksmith that was there. And it was too smooth.
Okay.
So I actually ended up, I don't remember if I think I took my angle grinder with like the coarsest, like it was like a concrete grinding disc I could find. And I ground the crap out of the shaft, and that got enough grip that it will grab me.
Oh.
So, yeah.
That'd be interesting. Maybe I can try that just to maybe scuff up edges or something like that, just to see if that'll help it bite a little better. So, I mean, because the Veritas one, the shaft on that is definitely ribbed, or however you want to describe it.
Yeah,
so,
yeah. It's not knurled, but it has ridges.
Yeah. So anyway, that's what's going on there. So, but yeah, it'll be interesting to see. I don't think I have really any other changes that I would make to the bench. I've been really happy with it.
Good.
Yeah. And the top is acquiring a nice patina of use, both in the coloring and because it's soft wood, it gets a little dinged up. There's that when you first make the bench like that, the top is this pristine, flawless surface, and you almost hate to see the first few marks on it, whether it's the bite of a saw or just dings and dents or whatever. But then you just kind of got to get over the hard middle of having, all of a sudden they blend in with a bunch of other ones, and then it just looks used. So
I feel like when I built my bench, I was very conscious of like trying not to put holes in it, it was just funny because it moved, it shrunk, like there are gaps on the corners, like it is nasty, it is messy. And now I'm like, you know what? I'm filling holes on this tabletop with epoxy. I'm like, I should tape the bottom of it. I'm like, it's just going to glue down to the bench. I let it glue down to the bench, and I just grab it and twist it and rip a chunk out of the top of the bench. Like, I'm at the point where I'm like, I know it's getting replaced, so it doesn't really matter.
There you go.
But yeah.
Yeah, when I built my workbench, it was out of the MDF top, layered top, and Douglas dimensioned 2x4 Douglas fir and stuff, and knowing that, like, what, if I tear it up and put holes in it, who cares? But I'm still like super careful about all that stuff, and even building it out of cheap materials, and I don't know, just OCD like that. But it's easy to resurface and make it look nice again if needed. But
yeah. All right, there you go. That wraps it up for another episode of the ShopNotes Podcast. If you have any questions, comments, or smart remarks, you can leave them on our YouTube channel in the comments section, or you can send us an email, woodsmith@woodsmith.com. Again, this podcast is brought to you by the fact that people support Woodsmith Magazine and Popular Woodworking and ShopNotes Magazine. So we would love it if you would subscribe to one, two, or all three of them and help us out and be able to continue to do these episodes. Thanks for listening, everybody. Bye.